Think about what happened during COVID. There were a lot of signs from important people that something bigger than COVID was coming soon, whatever it is. So, whether it's a big war, another world war, or something else, COVID 2.0 is the same crazy problems with inflation that we saw in COVID, right? And crazy problems with the supply line. It might be a good idea to keep things in your house that you need to stay alive. For X days, weeks, months, or whatever, that's going to be different for each person, but it's not a bad idea at all. And I don't think it's a tin foil hat thing to say, oh, I'd like to be able to feed my family if the grocery store shuts down. Yeah, we kind of saw how crazy it was with COVID. That is, and I live in Chile. When COVID first started, there was crazy stuff going on in South America. For a while, you had to show papers to get into grocery shops and other places. That kind of thing could happen again. It's not as crazy to talk about that stuff now as it might have been 4 or 5 years ago, and there's nothing wrong with being ready. In fact, there's probably something worse with not being ready at all. Writer and undercover reporter Whitney Webb tells us that something bigger than COVID 19 might be on the way. No matter if it's a new pandemic, a big war, or some other world crisis, there were a lot of big problems during the COVID 19 pandemic, such as inflation, broken supply chains, and social limits. She says that these problems could easily happen again or get worse, so it's smart to be ready with things that will keep you and your family safe, especially if things like food store closings happen again. Wait until the end of the video to hear Whitney Webb talk about the huge forces that might be in charge of this big thing that's coming. Hey guys, I want to let you know that not all of my users are actually subscribers. If you like keeping up with banking news, you might want to subscribe or like the video. You can back out at any time for free. Here's Whitney Webb talking about what AI coders are planning behind closed doors. But, the reason is often that the government isn't being nice. I mean, I was just talking about things like money and such. You can. In those situations, I think it's easier to pick apart, like because it's easier to see who gains and who doesn't. Then they'll say something like, well, we just remember when the Fed printed a lot of money during COVID and gave it to BlackRock to manage. Was that stupid? That's especially true since BlackRock wrote a plan for what the Fed would need to do in an unexpected crisis at the end of 2019. The plan included the monetary policy that the Fed used when COVID happened. That's just like, was that stupidity or corruption? I mean, a lot of the time they try to avoid responsibility for something. So when they get caught or start to get caught for something bad, they'll say, oh, don't look any further, we're just really stupid. However, if you think about the huge amount of money that has been moved from the bottom to the top in the last 20 years, well, I think it's clear, but that can't all have been because of poor management, right? Plus, more and more information has come out, like with COVID, about how safe and effective vaccines are. A lot of people on alternative media knew it was test runs and that there wasn't enough testing and stuff, but they were shut down. People were then pushed to do the stuff through laws and other means. Was that incompetence? They knew what a lot of people in independent media knew at the time because they were in charge, but they still went ahead with it. They're acting like it didn't happen now. Yes, because they want AI to run the internet and not only filter what's on it, but also make most of the material that's on it. It is said that by 2025, creative AI like ChatGPT will have written about 96% of all the things you read online, which means that they will completely replace their major media reporters. It looks like some magazines have already been caught using ChatGPT to write their stories. I believe Sports Illustrated was one, but things are only going to get worse. So when AI does both creating and curating, i.e. censoring everything, AI takes over the information environment. And whoever writes AI and decides what information is okay and what isn't has power like never before. Considering that most people today get their news from digital or online sources, that's an unimaginable amount of power over people read and receive, let alone how they think about reality. And it's clear that that affects how people act. Also, Henry Kissinger, whom I'm sure you know died not long ago, and the person he chose as his heir, former Google CEO Eric Schmidt, wrote a book about AI that talks about this topic in detail. In it, he says that AI is going to control how we see reality by controlling all online content, and that relying more and more on AI for everything is going to make people less smart until we can't see reality or make sense of anything without AI helping us. What will it be like? Have you seen the movie? Have you seen Wall-E or Wall-E? Yes, I think it was years and years and years ago. Oh, okay. where the people were. It's just going to be like, look, yes, having milkshakes in the pods. Yes, but it's worse than that because it looks like they still have some thinking abilities. That's what Kissinger and Schmidt say will happen. They lose the plan too. It's possible that they will no longer need us. Actually, I believe that people can't think critically and analyze things if they can't control how they see the world. It's simple to choose what to do with people. Then, where does that leave you when it comes to AI? Are you in favor of tech? I have a lot of thoughts. I don't need to hear all of them. I don't use them. Yeah. I mean, I think the whole point of getting a lot of people to use Chat GDP and all this other stuff is to follow the road that Kissinger, Schmidt, and other people are kind of laying out for people. If you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. If you learn a skill and then don't use it for 10 or 15 years, you might forget how to do it. Okay. Maybe even, I graduated from college a little over 10 years ago. How well do I remember the things I learned in college? Not very good, right? You lose something if you don't use it. I mean, I can see why people would use AI to tell them where to turn when they're driving their cars instead of real maps. It must be easy, right? What I mean is not that we should go back to the 1990s, okay? But you know what I mean. The point where people just let the computer tell them what to do gets dangerous after a while. In the end, they are micromanaged in almost every part of their lives. The idea is that AI knows a lot about us because it takes in so much info about us. Some of them say it knows us better than we know ourselves. Allows for a level of influence that has never been seen before. The problem is that the people who make AI program it and eventually decide what it can do not care about us. The thought of giving them our brains in a bag is not a good one. Even Sam Altman's project OpenAI is mostly owned by Microsoft. What do you have? Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and Oracle are just a few of the companies that own almost everything. Also, all of those businesses work for the military, intelligence, and the military, right? Palantir is also part of the mix. Palantir, for example, makes profiles of people, collects all of your information, and then makes profiles of you. This is something that Palantir can do, even if they don't think you are dangerous. And what happens when AI gets access to that and is put in charge of things like humanitarian help, which is what they want to do, or the government itself, which is something that the Schmidt-Kissinger book also talks about. When things get tricky, a lot of people have been talking about the coming social credit model, for example. What do you do if there's a big problem, your country turns into a war zone, or the economy fails? There isn't enough help for everyone, right? You need humanitarian aid or some other kind of aid from the government or another group. After some thought, they decide that it's okay to put a very smart AI in charge of it. Then that AI says, well, this person has been very good and hasn't done any of these thought crimes, but you have, who will it choose to give the food rations to? And such. That's what can happen when too much of this stuff is put in charge of too many things. There is also a whole other side to it when you're dealing with things like AI weapons, which are being used a lot right now in the conflict between Israel and Gaza to choose people to kill who they think are linked to Hamas.